you would have met her before Melody. Do you think you and this woman would be married?
The silence is deafening.
No.
Did y'all really have to give him the cue? Let him answer it.
What was I saying?
Let him answer
Because
it. Let
she
him
likes
Would
it
you like to
because she
answer
had
that?
money.
You don't want to answer it? Okay. How does it feel to hear that the man who said that he wanted to spend the rest of your life with you?
I think it's bull. At the end of the day, what I feel is that Martell couldn't leave either of us alone. That's what I would say. Because he was still there, and if I hadn't have left, he still would have been there.
So how does it feel to hear that? And I'm not going to put words in your mouth. And
Thank you.
And you can cuss me out and stop me when I say this. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. 'Cause I'm not. It seems to me that you were in love with two women at the same time, and that you just weren't enough for him to love all at once.
I was enough. I would never.
In a recent interview, Carlos King, the well-known creator and executive producer behind the popular reality series Love and Marriage, Huntsville, made a shocking confession. He openly admitted that the show might soon be coming to an end. This revelation sent waves through the fan community, as the show has been a mainstay of drama, love, betrayal, and personal struggles. But what pushed Carlos to the point where he felt the need to pull the plug on such a successful project? His explanation dives deep into themes of exhaustion, behind-the-scenes chaos, and personal betrayals that ran deeper than anyone could have imagined. Carlos didn't hold back when he described why Love and Marriage, Huntsville, had reached a breaking point. During one of his candid Instagram live sessions, Carlos openly shared that the show had simply become too overwhelming to manage. And not in a fun, over-the-top reality TV way. Instead, the environment surrounding the production became toxic and mentally exhausting, not only for the cast, but also for him as the leader.
I think you're still in love with Melody, and I think it's okay to say that. When you say I miss that, that is your family.
He admitted that he had reached a moment of reflection. I have to think about whether the energy surrounding this show is even worth it anymore, Carlos confessed. This wasn't just a producer venting frustration. It was a red flag that the issues behind the scenes had escalated far beyond typical reality TV squabbles. Carlos went on to reveal that the reunion specials, once highlights of the season, had become incredibly stressful to film. The cast members, who once worked together closely, had grown so divided that even arranging basic group scenes became a nightmare. People were refusing to sit together, walking off set during filming, and in some cases, avoiding being in the same room entirely. What should have been simple and straightforward scenes required hours of planning and delicate handling. And this constant tension didn't just affect the logistics of shooting, it began to take a toll on everyone's mental and emotional well-being.
I know that, I just know he's the one that's going to help me get over any foolishness or to start to satisfy my wife 100%,
Right.
to do what I'm supposed to do.
It's like devastating to me to think about my family being split. Why would I stoop so low and be so foolish to really risk my family multiple times?
Don't think I'm being facetious, but in terms of cockiness or arrogance or something like that, have you ever saw that in me?
It started a little bit after you got to college at A&M and then you started to become a star there.
Yeah.
That's when you start to get a little cocky, a little arrogant. You got to tone it down a little bit, man.
Yes.
I need
a whole makeover.
Yeah, if you can get one,
Right.
if you can get one without changing your heart. Because you got a good heart. You got a good heart, but it's just your mind telling you to do a lot of different things that you don't need to be doing.
Yeah.
He explained that the cast wasn't enjoying the process anymore. What had started as an exciting opportunity to share their real lives with viewers turned into a heavy burden. The pain and struggles they experienced in their personal lives were constantly being relived on camera, and those boundaries between personal and professional began to disappear. The stress only increased with each new season. Even Carlos, as the producer, admitted he felt drained by trying to pull stories out of people who were clearly done with it all. "I'm not going to beg grown adults to have conversations," he said bluntly. But things got even messier when Carlos revealed that much of the breakdown could be traced back to the once power couple of the show, Melody and Martell Holt. In the early days, their complicated marriage, publicized infidelity scandal, and messy divorce had become the centerpiece of Love and Marriage, Huntsville. Viewers were hooked by their intense and emotional journey. However, what started as gripping television quickly turned into a battlefield of bitterness and unresolved hurt. Carlos disclosed that, by the final season, Melody and Martell could barely speak to each other. Even scenes meant to show them co-parenting were cold, brief, and uncomfortable to watch. He admitted that because they refused to be near one another, it took even more effort from the production team just to organize the smallest scenes. And this wasn't just a problem for the two of them, the rest of the cast felt the ripple effects of their strained relationship. Group scenes became battlegrounds, as cast members were often forced to pick sides. Martell's actions were criticized by nearly everyone, leaving Melody feeling isolated and cornered. What once made the show shine, its dynamic cast interactions, became repetitive, emotionally draining arguments with no hope of resolution. The show was no longer about growth or progress. It was stuck in an endless cycle of the same hurt feelings and accusations, and Carlos found it nearly impossible to navigate this environment while still keeping the storytelling authentic.
All of that foolishness that you felt like was no big deal at one particular time has blossomed into a whole forest of big deal. Because my husband has all over the internet about having sex with his wife with cancer.
But Melody and Martell weren't the only ones clashing. The rest of the once close cast also started to crumble. Kimmy and Maurice Scott, who originally tried to be the voices of reason, found themselves pulled into the drama despite their efforts to stay neutral. From the very beginning, they positioned themselves as the peacekeepers, always trying to lower tensions and encourage mature conversations. Unfortunately, in a cast overflowing with grudges and resentment, their efforts backfired. According to Carlos, Kimmy and Maurice were accused of taking sides, even when they tried not to. Kimmy's calm demeanor was misinterpreted as fake or weak, while Maurice was seen as being too loyal to Martell. Even their own marriage storyline began to suffer under the weight of the surrounding drama. Fans started questioning their relationship, and they found themselves dragged into disputes that had nothing to do with them. Carlos shared that Kimmy, who was also facing serious health issues at the time, seemed especially affected by all the negativity. She continued to show up and film, but it was clear that the draining atmosphere was wearing on her. Carlos painted a vivid picture of a set where even simple conversations turned into explosive arguments. Group events, which were supposed to build unity or create lighthearted moments, became emotional war zones. And the dysfunction didn't stop with the cast. Carlos admitted that even some people working behind the cameras began acting inappropriately. According to him, some production staff members weren't being professional or honest. For someone like Carlos, whose brand is built on telling real, raw stories while celebrating Black excellence, this was a bitter pill to swallow. He hinted that some producers were playing favorites, spreading false stories, and even working against him. However, he chose not to name any specific names. Carlos explained that the division behind the scenes started when some producers wanted to stir up drama intentionally, even if it meant creating false narratives or manipulating situations. This went against everything Carlos stood for. He always prioritized authentic, natural storytelling that came from the real experiences of the cast members. As things grew more chaotic, Carlos felt like he no longer recognized the show he had once created with pride. Things only got worse when executives began interfering, pushing Carlos to focus on certain cast members more or protect others from negative storylines. This kind of interference created even more division and made Carlos feel like he couldn't trust anyone. When people in your own house are working against you, it's hard to keep the lights on, he said. He was constantly second-guessing who was truly on his side, making every decision more difficult than it should have been. But the deepest betrayal of all came from someone Carlos trusted like family. According to him, A cast member he once considered close crossed a line he could never forgive. This individual was leaking private information, sabotaging storylines, and using the show for their own personal gain. Carlos didn't reveal who this person was, but he made it clear that they actively worked to divide the cast, feeding different stories to different people to create more conflict and confusion. The show stopped being about the plot and became about who could trust whom. Carlos said this betrayal was one of the most painful experiences of his entire career. Not only was this person hurting the production, but they were also using the show's platform to build their own brand while tearing Carlos down in the process. It wasn't just a professional wound, it was personal. Carlos realized that he couldn't move forward with someone like that still involved. "I can't work with someone who's actively working against me," he said, admitting that this was one of the final straws that made him rethink the entire future of love and marriage, Huntsville. On top of all the inner turmoil, Carlos also pointed out how the constant pressure affected the cast's mental health. They weren't just filming a reality show anymore. They were living under the spotlight 24 hours a day. Every scene became a battle for public perception. If someone cried on camera, people accused them of faking it. If they stayed quiet, they were accused of hiding something. Over time, the cast grew more guarded, less willing to show their vulnerabilities on camera. And when the drama wasn't as dramatic as fans expected, the most extreme moments would get picked up by blogs and social media, fueling rumors and making things worse. Carlos admitted that the fame had become poisonous. He said the show reached a point where it started to damage his own mental and emotional health. What once brought him joy now felt like a daily struggle for survival. Longtime fans who saw him pour his heart into every season were heartbroken by his words. Love and Marriage, Huntsville, which started as a celebration of Black success, marriages, and community, had become a war zone of betrayal, stress, and constant damage control. The producers were split, the cast barely spoke off camera, and Carlos confessed that even walking onto the set felt emotionally draining. He never knew what disaster might await him next. At this point, protecting the brand he built from the ground up became more important than holding onto a show that no longer represented his vision. "I'm not going to lose myself for a show. I love myself more than I love what I made," Carlos declared. Fans had a lot to say. Many supported his decision, saying, "Carlos gave us everything, but you can only carry that kind of negativity for so long." Others noticed the change in Carlos's spirit. With one viewer writing, "You could see the shift in his eyes." This wasn't just burnout, it was betrayal. Some even applauded him for knowing when to walk away, telling him, "Let it go before it breaks you. You don't owe anyone your peace." But is this truly the end? Carlos hasn't laid out his plans in full detail, and fans are already speculating. Some believe this is more of a pause, a chance for Carlos to reorganize, revamp, and maybe even come back stronger with a fresh cast or new location. Others think he's ready to walk away from Huntsville entirely and start something new elsewhere. Carlos did hint at having more stories to tell and future plans in the works. One thing is certain, whatever Carlos does next, it will be on his terms. And now, all eyes are on him as fans wait to see what surprises he might still have up his sleeve. So, after everything Carlos King revealed, it's clear that Love and Marriage, Huntsville wasn't just a show, it became a battlefield of emotions, betrayals, and behind-the-scenes chaos. What started as a celebration of Black love, business, and community turned into something Carlos himself couldn't even recognize anymore. Sometimes, the very thing you build with passion can start draining you, and Carlos knew he had to make the hard choice to step back before it broke him completely. Now, the big question remains, was this truly the end? Or could Carlos come back stronger with a new cast, a fresh location, or maybe an entirely different approach to storytelling? He left us with hints, but no clear answers just yet. So, what do you think? Could Love and Marriage still have a future? Or did the drama behind the scenes become too toxic to ever recover? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's deep dive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates and behind-the-scenes truths. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.